Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Franchise Hockey Manager 9 playthrough of the Chicago Blackhawks. It is Sunday, February 10th, 2030, and the Blackhawks are almost 3/4 of the way through this 2029 to 2030 season, ranked second in the Western Conference with 77 points, so we are still absolutely in the mix for home field advantage throughout the playoffs and the President's Trophy. But right now we are at a break for the 2030 Winter Olympics, and we're going to have a lot of Blackhawks represented in the Olympics. Both of our goalies are on the Swedish team. We've got Sam Rinzel and Dylan Larkin skating for the U.S., Mitch Marner and Kent Johnson going for Canada, and last but not least, Adam Jecko going for the Czech Republic. And we also have Quinton Byfield and Quinn Hughes, who would likely be on their teams and possibly maybe added to their teams, but they are both banged up with injuries right now. So hope is that we get a gold medal out of this. So Sweden, the United States, Canada, or the Czech Republic will mean that at least one of our players and possibly a couple of our players are coming home from 2 weeks off with a gold medal. To be biased, it would be great to see Sam Rinzel and Dylan Larkin come back with a gold medal for the United States, which would be the USA men's Olympic hockey team's third gold medal, following in the heroics of 1980 and 1960. And we'll see what happens here in 2030, 50 years and 70 years after the greatest performances on the ice for the U.S. men's Olympic hockey team. And the Winter Olympics are over. We're ready to get back to action. If you take a look at the schedule for us, we've got a couple games coming up in the month of February. And then the month of March is going to be real intense in this final push for the playoffs. And then we'll still have 5 games in the first 11 days of April. The Blackhawks are in a pretty good situation right now, injury-wise. Victor Eklund, unfortunately, is out with a pretty serious injury, out indefinitely with a torn elbow ligament. But otherwise, everyone on the roster is happy and healthy at this point. Healthy, as you can see right here. And happy because when you're looking at team harmony, very harmonious locker room, no unpopular, disruptive, selfish, or unhappy players, no cliques and no conflicts right now. So things are in good control. And if you were wondering what happened in the Olympics, we did end up having a couple of Olympic champions, but Canada beat Finland for the gold medal 4-2. And the U.S. left out of the medals as Slovakia defeated the United States in the bronze medal game. So Canada with gold, Finland with silver, and Slovakia with bronze here in 2030. So that means that a couple of our players, as I mentioned, got gold medals. Kent Johnson with Canada, as we had talked about. And then Mitch Marner also with Canada, winning the gold medal this year. And our goal now turns to a Stanley Cup championship as we get ready for the last quarter plus of the season. We are third in hockey with 77 points, behind only the Vancouver Canucks and the Philadelphia Flyers. And the Flyers, we have 4 games in hand on them. Here in the Western Conference, we've got 1 game in hand on Vancouver. So we could be tied with points with them after 60 games. The concern is they've got 39 wins and we've only got 35. So we're going to have to get past them most likely in terms of points, because the win tiebreaker with us being 4 behind here with 23 games to go is going to be pretty hard for us to achieve getting past them in the W column. And as we get close to the trade deadline, kind of doing one final probably check of who's available on the trade block. A few interesting players available, most notably in terms of their age: Pavel Mintyukov or Isaac Rosen. The issue is that for both of those 26-year-olds, the price is prohibitive. Multiple first rounders don't get it done. Actually, 3 first rounders doesn't get it done in either case. Rosen, particularly being a free agent after this year, the price from Montreal seems a bit exorbitant. In Chukov, he's signed at a reasonable amount for another 3 years, but still more than we're looking to pay. And he's also banged up right now with groin tightness. A lot of players in their late 20s and early 30s also on the market. Quite honestly, although we do have money to take on some salary right now, given the fact that we've got Eklund on the injury list, I kind of like our team at this point. We did recently, right before the Olympic break, pick up Jet Luchanko off of the waiver wire and think that he's a versatile young forward signed for another couple years who can hopefully make a difference for our team going forward. But there's not an obvious move to me to make in the market that doesn't totally cripple us in terms of our draft picks, which, given that we're a win now team and we do have a couple of draft picks from when we traded away Matty Beniers last offseason, we do have the draft capital to make a trade, but the demands right now I think are just too high for the quality of players that we're going to get. So I think we are inclined to hold tight and run with this team the rest of the way. That's one of the top teams in hockey. And before we do start playing more games, the one thing that I did notice was Alex Bocage, who was one of our big free agent signings last year, and you may remember that he suffered severe blunt trauma to his eye during the preseason. He is back now, but our scouting report on him has definitely changed. You can see we kind of see him as having 2.5-star potential at this point. And our scouts are pretty good, and they know him better than the consensus. So it does seem like he's not the player that he used to be. You can see we only see him as having 2.5-star potential at this point, which by far makes him the weakest person on our team by that metric. Granted, he has been very productive in the 8 games he's played, with 9 points in 8 games since he came back from that serious injury. But I do worry that the nearly $5 million a year that we're paying him could become a pretty bad contract given the damage that he suffered to his eye. I did think about looking at the trade market and seeing if we could get out of the contract. It does seem like we could definitely get out of the contract, but it doesn't seem like there's any real better options available right now that are affordable. So I think we're going to keep him for the rest of this year, maybe see if that eye gets better and his potential gets higher. But right now it seems like, unfortunately, that injury has had a potentially significantly negative impact on what he is as a player, but we'll see if that changes over time. As I said, we're not going to make a move. I did think about it. There just wasn't anything that really worked. So we are going to run with him the rest of the way, but makes me feel even better about having the versatile winger Jet Luchanko on the roster now in case Bocage just ends up getting out of our regular rotation over the next month or two. And we did end up winning both of our games in February, beating the Sharks at home and the Kraken on the road. And as we talked about, we've got a pretty intense schedule coming up here in the month of March. A fair number of back-to-backs on Saturdays and Sundays, with Carolina and the Kings, Vancouver and Vegas, and then Colorado and Toronto over the course of the month. So get a little bit of action for our backup goaltender, Philip Svedabak, which won't be the worst thing in the world. Taking a look at the standings, even though we won two, we've actually fallen behind Winnipeg, who have been able to play more games than us since we got out of the Olympic break. But we are 1 point behind both Vancouver and Winnipeg for the most points in hockey now, and we've got a game in hand on both of those teams. So 21 games to go, and the month of March is going to be critical in determining whether we win the President's Trophy and whether we have the #1 seed in the Western Conference or not. And unfortunately, we got some really bad news with Quinton Byfield going to be out 1 to 2 months with a lacerated spleen. So that could have a pretty significant impact on us. Has 41 points in 47 games for us. He is our first-line center. So clearly not good to be losing him. And given that we are hoping to go on a long playoff run, and the playoffs are starting in less than a month and a half, we may need to tap the trade market hard right now. Fortunately, we've got 2 days until then, but certainly the loss of him leaves us with an even bigger hole in the lineup. Right now, we are down our second line left winger and our first line center. We've got a lot of good offensive players, and we've got a lot of good depth on the team. That said, we are all in to try to win it all this year, and adding a little bit of talent now might not be the worst thing for us to think about doing. And unfortunately, the prices still just seem exorbitant. So we are actually going to bring back up Tomas Vesely, who we sent down a while ago at this point, although with the break, he's only played 2 games in the AHL, scored 2 goals. Rookie, 21-year-old center, wasn't getting regular playing time with us, and we thought he would benefit from perhaps being down in the AHL where he could play more regularly. But now with that injury, we've got a definite opening for a center, and hope that maybe he can be somewhat more effective down the stretch here than he was when he was first up with the big club. And a week and a half into March, we've won 2 and lost 2 so far, but did just suffer another injury. Sam Rinzel, the excellent offensive young defenseman, going to be out 2 to 3 weeks with a hyperextended knee. We're not going to delay treatment on him, so we're going to put him right onto the IL. Unfortunately, if you remember from our previous episode, we did lose a solid young defenseman through waivers when we tried to get him back to the minors a month or 2 ago. So we don't have as much defensive depth in the AHL as we used to, unfortunately. But whoever we bring up probably isn't going to be playing a ton anyways. I guess that's the one positive thing. Probably we'll bring up Adam Wilsby, who's been in our organization for a few years. You can see he was up for 1 game, or played 1 game with Chicago last year, was probably up more than that. We will bring Wilsby back up on board, but would not expect that he's going to be getting a ton of playing time. Probably will be our 7th defenseman, and only see action if we got games back-to-back, which we will have a few times, and the other 6 defensemen are not completely fit. And the Blackhawks have split our last 2 games, beating the Kings at home, but then we just got routed 5-1 by Arizona at home. Another injury also for the team, Nathan Villeneuve, going to be out for 1 to 2 weeks with a sprained ankle. We're not going to delay his treatment, just hopefully can get through that. So we will go back to the minors and see who we can potentially bring up. It's getting to be relatively slim pickings at this point. Julian Mays was up earlier, was not all that great. I think we're going to give an opportunity to maybe Sasha Boisvert, who's hasn't been all that great down in the AHL this year, -5 in 51 games with 30 points. But still a player that I think could be a contributor for us down the line. Only going to be playing on the fourth line if he does play over the next week and a half, and very well maybe not playing much at all. We are going to have, in terms of the schedule, though, over the next week and a half, potential back-to-back games next weekend at Vancouver and Vegas, which would be potentially right about when, in a best-case scenario, we would be getting Villeneuve and potentially Rinzel back. So we'll see how things go with those two relatively minor injuries for them. Good news is that Victor Eklund is no longer indefinite, but 3 to 4 months with a torn elbow ligament. Extremely unlikely that we'll be seeing him. I guess you can say there's a slim chance if we make it to the Stanley Cup Finals that perhaps he'd be back. Quentin Byfield, still recovering from that lacerated spleen from a couple of weeks ago. Still has 1 to 2 months till he's going to be ready to go. Clearly would hope that he would be back for the playoffs, but it's by no means certain at this point. And still kind of a win one, lose one kind of month for the Blackhawks. Unfortunately, the only benefit of the home loss against Dallas yesterday was that it was an overtime loss. So I think it was an overtime loss. Let me check. No, it was not an overtime loss, so we didn't even get a point out of it. But Tyson Buczkowski was the guy, the defenseman we had released a month and a half ago, who was picked up and didn't make it through waivers. Unfortunately, he just suffered massive eye trauma and is going to be out at least 6 months. So with the eye issues that we are already dealing with Bocage, kind of sad to see Tyson Buczkowski dealing with the same thing. Taking a look at the standings, we're still hanging around, tied for the best record in the Central at 89 points with the Jets. But Vancouver's opening up on us a little bit lately. They are now 4 points ahead of us in the standings, although we still do have 1 game in hand on them. 13 games to go. Definitely still in the running for the President's Trophy, but going to have to tighten up our play a bit over the last close to month of the season. Certainly with 13 games to go. Would love to see us get to 50 wins, which means we're going to need to go obviously win 9 of those 13 games. If we get 9 wins, it doesn't really matter if we get any overtime points. I think if we can get to 50 wins, we're going to be real competitive for the best record in the sport. And the Blackhawks have earned a win and an overtime loss in our last 2 games. So with 92 points, we still lead the Central. But you can see there's only 2 points separating us, the Jets, and the Wild. We're 4 points behind the Canucks still, and we are going to play at Vancouver this evening. Clearly, if we want to have any chance of getting past the Canucks for the best record in the Western Conference, and then hopefully getting past both them and the Flyers for the best record in all of hockey, winning tonight on the road would be a almost critical step to make that happen. And we did get a shutout win on the road against Vancouver, had our backup goalie Sveta back in the net, and he saved all 29 shots that he faced. So we're still up against it to get past Vancouver, but that was a big step in the right direction and gave us a little bit of breathing room, at least on the Wild. We have a game in hand on both of those teams. Got Vegas today, which is the second to worst team in the Western Conference, third worst team in all of hockey in terms of their number of points. Obviously not easy to win on the road, but the hope is certainly that we get a second in a row on the road against them. And Matty Beniers, who we traded away for those number 1 picks that I was mentioning earlier, just signed a 6-year extension with Pittsburgh Wonder what kind of money he's going to be getting from them going forward. $7.5 million a year for the 6 years after that. So a little less than we thought we might need to pay him when we were deciding to deal him, but still think that the deal that we got for Kent Johnson, who we brought on as a free agent before we traded away Beniers, a little better for us at 6 years, $6.25 million, so about $1.25 million less. And Kent Johnson has been pretty productive in his first year with the Blackhawks. 32 goals, 32 assists, plus 14 on the season, playing over 20 minutes a game. If you're looking closely, you notice that we did get the back-to-back wins on the road, and they were back-to-back shutout wins. So Jesper Wallstedt saw the great performance from his backup the night before and decided he also wanted to go out and save 29 games in a big win for us. So 9 games left to go, and we are in a flat-footed tie now with the Canucks at 96 points for the best in hockey. As we have been talking about, though, they're still up 2 wins on us, so we are going to have to get past them in points if we're going to claim a second straight President's Trophy. And good news that Nathan Villeneuve is back off of the injured list. I think we should be seeing Sam Rinzel hopefully relatively soon. Villeneuve being back will allow us to send Sasha Boisvert down. He did play 6 games for us, picked up a couple of assists, and was +1. He's only playing a little over 11 minutes a game, but good to see the former high draft pick for us get a little bit of action and experience at the NHL level. And we did just get a win against Anaheim, so the Blackhawks are playing our best hockey of the month at this point. We've won 3 in a row and 4 of 5. Have games at St. Louis, at Colorado, and home against Toronto to finish off the month. Unfortunately, the Canucks keep winning too, so we are tied with them at 98 points for the most in hockey. But as we've talked about, there's still 2 wins ahead of us, and with just 8 games to go, going to be pretty hard for us to get past them in the number of wins we've got. So think that we're going to have to ensure that we have more points than them when all is said and done, because unlikely that we will be winning that tiebreaker. Some more good news potentially on the injury front for the Blackhawks. Luke Coughlin, who's been banged up, is now game available after having some teeth knocked out. And Sam Rinzel hopefully will be back any day now, which will allow us to hopefully get Willsby back down to the AHL. He's actually had to play 4 games for us with Coughlin being banged up. Has been fine, +4 in those 4 games with a couple of assists, but clearly he is not as talented as the other blue liners that we have. And unfortunately, our Blackhawks lost at St. Louis today, while the Canucks got an overtime loss, so they picked up a point on us. They're a point ahead of us, 7 games to go, and 2 up on us in the win column. So we are still in the mix for the best record in hockey, but we could also get passed by the Jets and the Wild and end up with the 3rd seed in our own Central Division. So nothing is certain for the Blackhawks at this point. Hopefully we'll get those players that are banged up back sooner rather than later, and they hopefully can give us a boost these last couple games. At Colorado, the next one on the calendar. They are the worst team in the Western Conference with 47 points, the worst team in hockey. Certainly would think that that would be one that we need to get a W on and a W from, even though the game is on the road. And unfortunately, we lost that game on the road at Colorado, which could cripple our season. We've got a home game against Toronto now. They are the 2nd worst team in all of hockey, so not getting a win against the worst team in hockey definitely hurts. Almost a must-win situation against Toronto. You can see we're still only a point behind Vancouver, who also lost. but we've now been passed by Winnipeg in our own division, and we're only a point up on Minnesota. So, and we're not going to win a tie with Winnipeg or Vancouver in the standings, given that we've got those 8 overtime losses kept us from some W's. So really need this win against Toronto today. Good news is that Rinzel is back and healthy, so we are going to move him to the active roster. We are going to thank Mr. Wilsby for coming up and helping us out, but we will waive him. Not sure if anyone will claim him or not, but looking at the rest of the injuries, 2 to 3 weeks till Byfield is going to be back, so potentially could have him maybe for a first-round playoff series if we're really lucky. And obviously with Eklund out another 3 to 4 months, with it being April 1st tomorrow, the chance of him even being able to play in a potential Stanley Cup Finals is pretty remote at this point. So not counting on getting Eklund back, but Byfield would think that we would have some point in our first round series, hopefully sooner rather than later, since he is a big part of our offense. And we did get a clutch shutout win from our number 1 goalie yesterday. Surprisingly, Jesper Wallstedt didn't get one of the stars of the game. Looks like he only faced 19 shots, so we definitely dominated that Toronto team. Blackhawks continue to be one of the top jersey selling teams in hockey, with 6 of the top 20 selling jerseys being members of the Blackhawks. Take a look at the development report for the month of March. Roy Chung and Mathis Dubé among young guys on the NHL level getting better. Mitch Marner, the aging veteran, continues to move in the wrong direction, unfortunately. But that win against Toronto was very big, because it looks like Vancouver lost, so we're now a point ahead of them. Unfortunately, the Jets have a game in hand on us, and they're only a point behind us, and they've got 2 wins more than us. So still shaping up between Vancouver, Chicago, Winnipeg, Minnesota, and Philadelphia. Right now we have 5 teams separated by 3 points, with 4 to 6 games to go for all of those teams for the best record in hockey. So it's going to be a pretty crazy battle here over the last week and a half of the season to see who ends up with the President's Trophy. And as we've talked about in the Central Division, we could have the best record in all of hockey, or we could be a 3rd seed in our own division when all is said and done. It's such a tight battle. And as we get ready to begin the month of April, the good thing is the Jets no longer have a game in hand on us. The bad thing is that they're now ahead of us in the standings with 101 points. So 5 games left. We are 3 free of the Wild, and we've got a game in hand on them. So hopefully that worst case scenario of ending up the 3rd seed in the Central is off the table as far as something that could happen. We've got home games against the Islanders and the Devils this week, at Arizona, home against Winnipeg, and home and home against Winnipeg the final 2 days of the season. So the Islanders, the Devils, Arizona, and Winnipeg to finish off the season. Islanders not having that great a season, just 76 points. The Devils look like they are still fighting for one of the final playoff spots in the East. Arizona is still battling for a playoff spot here in the West. And then Winnipeg, those games are going to be critical. That's really ultimately going to determine certainly who wins the Central Division, but possibly also who ends up with the best record in hockey. And it's certainly possible if we split those last 2 games between us and Winnipeg, that would allow somebody like the Flyers or the Canucks to sneak into the best record in hockey. But Before we get to that point, we've still got 3 important games to play, and then we're going to have a long rest of 3 full days off before finishing up with those 2 games against Winnipeg. So right now, hopefully the teams that have flown out to the east from the East Coast to Chicago, we can take care of business against both the Islanders and the Devils these next couple games. And it was an ugly result at home against a pretty mediocre Islanders team, 8-7 overtime loss. So that could really hurt us. Dylan Larkin looks like he had a big night, 3 goals and an assist, but unfortunately was an overtime loss. So the only positive thing is that we did get a point out of the game, but now we're only tied with Winnipeg, and they've got a game in hand on us. So that was a pretty unfortunate result against a team that only has 80 points and is, I don't know if they're mathematically eliminated from the playoffs yet, but they're pretty darn close to it. The Islanders only have 78 points. I was looking at the Rangers, so they may not be mathematically eliminated, but they are extremely close to it. I guess with 5 games left, they've still got a chance in the East, but certainly feeling like this home game against New Jersey is almost a must-win situation for us tomorrow. And we did get a 6-1 win at home against the Devils. Unfortunately, center Cole Sillinger is banged up, going to miss about 4 days. Hopefully that ends up just being 1 game. But certainly good to get the win against the Devils. Issue is that we're tied with Winnipeg, and they've still got a game in hand on us. So we may be in a situation where we've got to win both of those final 2 games in the home and home to clinch the division title over them. The good news is that Philadelphia's gotten to 100 points, but they're 3 behind us. Vancouver at 99, although they do have a game in hand on us. The Wild also at 99, but we've played the same number of games at them. Still possible we finish 3rd in the division, but right now we're tied for the most points in hockey. The only issue is the team we're tied with has 33% more games to play than we do at this point, and is up 3 wins on us in the standings. But the thing we've got going for us is that we play them the final 2 games of the season. So going to need to beat the Coyotes on the road tomorrow to put ourselves in a position where hopefully we control our own destiny in those last couple of games. And a little bit of good news that Quentin Byfield is ready to start skating, but still not going to be ready to go for about 2 weeks. So taking a look at the calendar, we've got almost a week left in the season, and then there'll probably be a couple of days off before the playoffs start. So we should have him back at some point in our first round series. Obviously would love it to be earlier in the series than later, to ensure that we can at least hopefully get by that first round series and then have everybody healthy and well that's going to be healthy and well for a potential second round matchup. And we did get the 6-2 win against Arizona. Vesely with a couple of goals for us. He's been playing pretty well since we brought him up. You can see we jumped out early to a 4-1 lead in the first period. And then got both of our goals from Vesely in the second as we took a 6-1 lead, ended up winning 6-2. So nice performance there for the Blackhawks. Fortunately, the Jets keep winning also. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the game that they have in hand on us. But with that win against Arizona, at least we're going to have a chance, even if they win, because if they come in to those final 2 games of the season with 107 points, if we win both games, we'll get by them. Actually, if we win one and get an overtime win in the other, we would get by them too. But see what happens in that game that they do have in hand on us. We're at the point now where the best the Wild can do is tie us in terms of points for the season, and we're a win up on them. So hopefully the worst case scenario is that we're second in the Central, but it is kind of crazy that right now we are 3 points up on any other team besides the Jets. So we're, going to either be a second seed in our own division or likely win the President's Trophy, which just goes to show you that when you're in a division with 3 of the 400-point teams in hockey, the difference between having a home field advantage throughout the playoffs or home ice advantage throughout the playoffs and being a number 3 seed is pretty narrow. And we've made it to those final 2 games of the season, home against Winnipeg and at Winnipeg. Taking a look at the standings, they did happen to lose their most recent game, so we are in a flat-footed tie with them. If we split these 2 games, though, they will take the President's Trophy as well as the division by virtue of more wins than us. So the scenario for us to come away with a second consecutive President's Trophy is win one of the games and tie or win the other game. Otherwise, if we split with them, unfortunately, the fact that they've got the 51 wins will mean that they beat us in the standings. But if we do win these 2 games, we'll get to the 50 wins that I thought would get us the President's Trophy. And it ultimately will if we can win these final 2 games of the year. So we'll take a look at our team. We've been benched Korchinski most recently, playing the rookie Roy Chung more recently. He's plus 18 this year in 49 games. Korchinski is only plus 1 in 71 games. And he's also not signed next year, looking for pretty big money. So go with the guy who's going to be with us. Cole Sillinger still banged up, only at 80%. So he will be a not healthy scratch, but a scratch for us again. And then Frank Nazar going to be scratched in this one also. So the line's not really any different than the game before. We are going to start Wallstedt at home today. And then we will have Sveta back on the road in the potential big game tomorrow. But for the game tomorrow to matter to us, we basically need to win today. And we will see what happens. We did get the 5-3 win, so we are still alive for the President's Trophy. And now we've kind of put the pressure back onto the Jets. Unfortunately, Xavier Veilleux, the brilliant young defenseman, plus 32 this year in 77 games, day-to-day with nausea. Cole Sillinger is back, but he probably won't be at 100% coming off of the injury. But we've at least put ourselves into a situation where we only need a tie. Winnipeg needs to beat us. Nobody else can catch us at this point. Oh, I guess the Flyers have 106 points, but their season is done. So the worst case scenario for us is we finished tied for the most points in all of hockey, but we would end up losing the President's Trophy if the Jets beat us. So we need a win or a tie on the road, and they are going for a win. Veilleux banged up, as we talked about, so we will put Korchinski into the lineup for him. Sillinger only at 80%, so we're probably going to keep him out. And unfortunately with Marner at only 81%, it stinks to not have our captain for that final game of the year. Given his age, though, I don't want to push him too much. What I found in previous years is when Larkin was having a lot of his injuries a few years ago, when I started pushing an older player, playing them when their fitness was, in the mid-80s or below, would seem like that could lead to some injuries. No guarantees, but this is a tough one for me because it's the last game of the year. As much as I want to get creative and go with the players who are more fit, I can't take our captain out of the lineup for a must-tie game. So Nazar and Sillinger, once again, going to be the scratches, and Veyu scratched because he's unavailable, so that will get Korchinski back into the lineup. Just the lines a little bit, got Marner back on top. Sveta back with 100% fitness after Wallstedt did his job yesterday. Going to go with the hot goalie in the final game of the year on the road at Winnipeg. A win or a tie, and we have a second straight President's Trophy. And we do get the 5-2 victory. So the Blackhawks, with an up and down year, get the job done when we need to with that win against Winnipeg. Lafreniere with a goal and an assist. Marner, despite being winded, a goal and an assist. And Luchanko, the waiver wire pickup, the third star of the game, with an assist. So ended up right where we wanted to be. It was definitely a struggle over the last few weeks of the season to get there, but with 82 games in the books, the Chicago Blackhawks, for the second consecutive season, are President Trophy winners and the best team in hockey. So we are going to have home field advantage, or I keep calling it home field advantage. I've been playing too much OOTP baseball. We will have home ice advantage for the Stanley Cup playoffs, and as long as the Blackhawks are alive, taking a look at the deeper standings here, looking at the Western Conference, we were plus 63 in terms of our goal differential on the year. The Jets actually were one goal better than us. Very evenly matched teams. Look at that. Same number of goals allowed by both of these teams. They had one more goal than we did. So our plus 63 was second best in the West, and actually second best in all of hockey. But the points that we scored are the most in all of hockey. We got to the 50 wins we thought we needed with all of the 1 points for the overtime losses we had. That was able to get us to 109 points on the year. And as we talked about, the best record in hockey. So take a look at the roster now. Veyu hopefully will be over that nausea relatively soon. Otherwise, everyone is healthy. Byfield is day-to-day at this point, so we will have him back at some point during our first-round playoff series. And obviously, Eklund is extremely unlikely to see any action. Still hold out a tiny bit of hope that if we make it to a Stanley Cup Finals and he heals a bit more quickly than anticipated, maybe he can come out the last couple games of the series and give us a little bit, but certainly not counting on that. But the regular season is over, and we achieved one of our big goals, which was to repeat as President's Trophy winners. And we'll find if we can do better in the playoffs this year than last season, where we were bounced in the second round, and perhaps claim the second Stanley Cup championship of this playthrough with the Blackhawks in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.